Whitetail deer. There's not a stealthier animal, a more wary animal in North America. The ultimate challenge to hunters, of course, we're often looking for bucks, the big wily bucks that seem to be even more sensitive and more wary than does like this one. But how do these deer react? How do they behave, especially with the onslaught of hunting season on November 15th? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. Thursday night time for Michigan Outdoors. Where are the deer? Where are those bucks? Those are questions most hunters have for most of the season. There's the buck right in the middle of the frame. All you can see are his antlers. He's bedded down. No, he's getting up. He saw something, heard something, or smelled something that put him on edge. Probably us. We're in the middle of a 5-acre fenced-in field at the Houghton Lake Deer Research Station. It's late October. The rut is on. One big buck is in this pen, along with about 20 does, fawns, and yearlings. But the one big buck right there is the only deer we see. He, along with the other 20, are undoubtedly looking at us, the same way hundreds of deer watch you during the deer season, but you never knew they were there. His tail is flared, an alarm signal to other deer to be alert, to watch, listen, and smell the wind to see if danger is close, and that's what he's doing. His most important sense is smell. That's why he often licks his nose to put more moisture there so the odors on the wind are captured and magnified. His nose is his most reliable method of identifying a creature as a meat eater, and meat eaters of any kind are avoided by deer. Because deer don't eat meat, their bodies don't produce L-serine, an amino acid that our bodies produce. So the smell of other plant-eating animals doesn't scare a deer at all. It's only meat eaters that signal danger. Deer are cud chewers, ruminants as they're called in the scientific world. Like cattle and sheep, they gather a lot of food, gulp it down after a few chews, then later find a place to bed down where they can regurgitate the vegetation, chew it slowly and thoroughly, and finish digesting it. When a deer is feeding, it's more vulnerable to danger because its head is down and it's not watching its flanks. That's when the wolves make their moves, when the deer aren't watching. But they watch frequently while they eat. Wind like this makes deer even jumpier. With all the trees and grass waving, they can't spot other animals moving as easily. They can't hear as well with all the racket in the air, and the scents are scattered on the wind. Wind makes deer more alert than ever. So where do you find the deer on days like this? Well, same place you'll find them on most days, hidden in bedding areas. They won't be asleep, but they'll be in that tall grass hidden. When something approaches like our cameras, we get too close, they jump up. But they're not eager to leave this tall grass. They feel safest there. They listen every moment, and they can hear much better than you or I. We have about 3 square inches of reflective surface on each of our ears. An ear on a deer forms a cup with 24 square inches of surface to gather sounds. Their ears are like radar, alert them to danger, but after hearing an odd sound, they're not likely to go too far. They move a short distance, then stop, try to figure out what made the noise, where it is, and if it poses a real threat. Now this little deer here, the fawn, is a buck fawn. You can see his buttons, the little nubbins where his antlers will grow next year. Young deer like this aren't the most wary. They're still learning. They tend to be a little careless, but these two are doing all right. Now watch how they peer over the weeds, then dip down to hide in the grass. Now undoubtedly, they'll bed down again once they find that we're not coming after them. Now, even though these deer are in a research pen, they're wild deer. They act exactly the same as they would if there were no fences. And here's our big buck with some company. The other deer in the field are getting stirred up now, leaving their beds appearing from nowhere. Some are alarmed and they want to run. The youngest ones are the most active and the least cautious. They haven't learned that while they're running, they can't detect danger as well as when they're standing still. Now, this is a trick that deer hunters need to learn too. Sit still and you can watch the woods better than when you're walking. While you're sitting, you won't be scaring deer either. Of this group, watch who runs. Look at that. It was that little fawn taking off while the other 2 deer, the bigger deer, the older deer, the wiser deer, stand and watch. They're not sure what threat we pose, which way they should move, if any. Most often, Hunters, this is how the bigger deer will react when they see or hear you in the woods. Those big ones will stand and watch. Notice how his ears are plastered back? Well, that's so he can see. His eyes give him about a 310-degree field of vision. He lays his ears back so he can see behind him. I don't call that smart, actually. I call that wary. That's why this buck has lived so long. Whether the threat is a hunter or a wolf or a pack of dogs, deer live longer if they can avoid them. So a more wary deer keeps himself away from the meat eaters in the world, always scenting the wind for the smell of a meat eater. The younger deer spend more time moving, like I said, and less time watching. Does are the same way. Very often when you spook a doe, her motion, the flagging of her tail, will be seen by the other deer, the bucks, back in the corners, and they won't move. They'll watch. They'll slip away quietly without waving their tails. She's decided to slip away. We haven't moved, and the other deer have quieted down. This big boy's at ease, too. He licks his nose a few times and apparently coughs, flicks his tail, which tells me he's more at ease, and now he's decided to blend in with the landscape. There he goes, bedded down. If it weren't for his antlers, we'd never see him. Because this deer is in a field where there aren't any saplings, he can't rub his antlers, so they've bleached out white. In the wild, his antlers would be dark from rubbing on trees. He'd blend right in. Dr. Rob Wagner from Deer and Deer Hunting magazine has an article in the upcoming issue of the Outdoor Digest on the subject of deer beds and what deer do with their time. According to an English study, deer spend about 7 hours a day gathering food, much of this near their bedding areas. They spend 7 hours chewing their cud, often from a bedding area. Another 5 hours are spent bedded down, just watching without chewing their cud, and only 2 hours of the day are spent actually sleeping. About 3 hours are spent moving around from one area to another. So obviously, bedding is the most common activity. Most of their time is spent in areas where they like to hide and lay down. This is where you should concentrate your hunting. It's more productive than hunting the feeding areas. But even if you find the bedding areas, will you see the deer? Will you be patient enough to wait? 2 more reasons why putting venison on the table is an ultimate challenge in Michigan outdoors. You get a buck that has 10 antler points or better. Make sure you fill out one of our forms for our Stroh's Hunting Award. You could be a winner of a Stroh's Hunting Award patch and a membership in the Outdoors Club. Remember, that's 10 points or better. No trouble scoring this deer. It easily makes the 10-point minimum. Gary Beatrice, you called up and you said you had a how many point buck?
15.
15, you got it. Let's take a look at these points. Big tines here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll hold a ring there. 5, 6. Double tines here. 7, 8, 9 easy points on this side. Move over here for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, Gary, if you were pressing it with maybe 9 points, we could maybe squeak another point out around the burr there, but you don't need it with this buck.
If you wanted to cheat a little bit, but thanks.
Gary Beatrice is from Milford, a bow hunter who has been hunting this buck for how many years?
3 years.
And you've seen it in years past in hunting season?
Yes, I have. Couldn't get close enough to get him, though.
Okay, now this year, he has quite a story. He was hunting last Saturday, during the day, during the rain, then you went pheasant hunting.
Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon, you got back up in your tree stand at 3:30.
Right.
Got bummed out by what, 5:30?
About 5:30, I was ready to call it a night.
So you got out of your stand.
Got out of the stand, walked out of the woodlot, and saw a half a dozen deer in an alfalfa field.
So what'd you do?
Made an about-face right back up the tree.
Right back
Just climbed
up the
it like
tree.
a monkey.
So you were waiting for that group of deer to come from that farmland in the alfalfa.
Yes.
And what happened?
I didn't know if this deer was with him or not. Evidently he wasn't, but I knew there was a buck with that pile of deer, so I waited and waited, and then I heard a small noise behind me.
And he was behind.
He was it. And they got closer and closer, and
you saw, just before you took him with your bow, you saw that he was the 15-pointer?
I thought he was the 10-pointer that I had seen in velvet earlier in the summer.
What a thrill when you came up to him.
I didn't know what I really had.
Well, Gary, you have a real winner. It could be one of the biggest bucks of the year, maybe the biggest buck. We don't know. We'll see you on Big Buck Night, all right, Gary?
You got it.
Terrific. What a rack. This makes headlines in our trophy book, and here's Bob Garner with some outdoor headlines.
Inland lake anglers should get a better shot at fishing hard-running, high-jumping Atlantic salmon in the next few years, thanks to a gift from the states of Maine and New York. 84,000 fingerling Atlantics have been planted in Higgins, Crystal, and Torch Lakes and Lake Charlevoix. Gull Lake in Kalamazoo County was planted with Atlantics this spring. The fish should grow to 3 pounds or so by 1988, and biologists say since these fish do not die after spawning, like cohos or Chinooks, they could easily reach 10 to 20 pounds and provide lots of fishing action for years to come.
Hi there, I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors.
It was 5 years ago when PBS viewers first heard their now familiar words from Fred Trost on a Thursday night. Michigan Outdoors viewers are the most important part of the success the show has enjoyed over the past 5 years. So here's a hearty thank you to PBS for inviting us into its studios and airwaves, and to you, the viewers, for inviting us into your homes on Thursday nights.
Year number 6, I tell you, this is an exciting one. This is the year that we're able to launch Outdoors Forever, among many other things.
It's going to be an historic year
It
for
is. It's going to be
Michigan
dynamite, and
Outdoors.
I'm glad that you've all supported and are a part of it. Letters, Bob, from our viewers. We have a deer hunter who wants to get some information about the deer season. He wants to know if there's any way he can get information on the DNR deer density surveys. William Nolan from Canton, here's what you do.
Absolutely no problem. All he has to do is write the DNR Wildlife Division at P.O. Box 30028, Lansing, Michigan. Ask for a deer density map, and they will send him a county-by-county list of the buck take for individual counties.
May or may not help you because the deer density also coincides with the hunter density, so it doesn't mean your odds are going to be any better. Another question that we get a lot of this type of question, how old do you have to be to take hunter's safety?
Well, there is no minimum age, but of course everybody 17 and under must have taken a hunter's safety course to get a license. There's no minimum age, but DNR authorities kind of want you to be about 11. That's the way the textbook is geared up for the reading level of about an 11-year-old.
In 1988, by the way, all first-time hunters, no matter your age, will have to take a hunter safety course, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more questions on that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a question for you folks in our outdoor quiz.
What state has the highest percentage of its population that hunts and fishes? According to a 1980 Fish and Wildlife Service survey, Alaska has the highest, with 54% of its residents over 16 reporting that they hunt or fish. Wyoming is second with 51%.
You may have heard about the handicap hunter law, which enables people who are handicapped to hunt from a standing vehicle during deer season. Of course, it's illegal to hunt for a vehicle for the general public. The law is in the compilation of natural resources laws, quite a volume that has very little that addresses handicapped hunters or people with any type of disabilities. But this law says that the department may issue, without a fee, a special permit to paraplegics or amputees who are unable to walk, authorizing them to hunt upland game, including deer, from a standing vehicle. And they may possess a firearm or a bow in the vehicle, loaded, as long as it's motionless. Now, our own Roger McCarville, Executive Director of Outdoors Forever, you have been using a wheelchair,
Right.
off and on, for 10 years?
Over 10 years now, right. And I use it for my mobility and to get around and so forth.
The other day, you filled out your application for the special permit to hunt and called your local conservation officer to see if you could get this permit.
Yes, you have to
What
go in and
happened?
have the conservation officer inspect you to make sure that you're handicapped. The handicap is very specific. Either you walk or you don't walk. Those are the only two areas that he got into.
So, did you get the permit?
No.
You
no,
didn't?
I didn't get the permit because I can walk, even though I thought because I can't walk on uneven ground or brush or snow that I would qualify at not being able to walk. But the conservation officer and the law says if you can walk at all,
If you can take one
One
step
step.
on the road,
right,
despite the fact that if there was a ditch, maybe with some water in it or even without, you couldn't walk down there with your artificial leg.
no, not safely, not carrying a weapon, no.
What happens if you fall down?
Well, you're in trouble. I have a hard time getting up. I have to crawl up trees or whatever I can get a hold of to get up.
Do you want to hunt from a vehicle?
No, I'd rather be outside. My problem with wanting to maybe get the license was the fact that maybe I get out there and the snow's too deep, or I'm up there already hunting, you don't know what the weather's gonna be, and then I can't go out. And I feel safety-wise, I probably would have liked to have had it. Now, the officer did say, if I cannot wear my my artificial leg, then I would qualify because I can't walk at all with the other.
Quickly, do you think most handicap hunters want to be able to hunt from a vehicle?
No. No, most of them want to be outside. You get a better range, you got a chance to, you know, better vision and so forth. You're limited in the vehicle.
But the point is, and what we're trying to do with Outdoors Forever, by getting laws like this available for handicappers, is sort of create some hunting insurance for your future hunting, maybe towards the end of our lives or after accidents like yours, Raj, where it might be the only way for that deer season that you could hunt, depending on the conditions.
It's great to have it available if you need it.
Interesting. There's more to come out of this from the Senate Task Force investigating the hunting and fishing laws relating to handicappers, and we'll bring you up to date on that in the future. Now, deer season is a biggie, but there's still a few other events coming up. As far as presentation goes, this recipe, Kathy, is tops. It looks gorgeous.
Oh, gosh, you almost hate to cut into it.
This is called Salmon Spinach Mold with white sauce, a recipe that Diane Lardy from Diamonddale entered into our Fish and Wild Game Cooking Contest last March.
As the runner-up.
This is so beautiful, I can't even bear to cut into it quite yet with the spoon. But she got a score of 36, and the winning fish recipe was a 37.
So close.
Very close. Before we cut into this, let's see how we put it together.
It was really quite easy. I was kind of surprised. Got spinach that's been parboiled, and you're going to chop it.
Cooked for about 5 minutes
Right,
or so?
like I say, it's not cooked completely through. And we've got butter here. You could use margarine, but I think I prefer butter, the taste of butter. And fry the scallions in it and just kind of cook them through, just until they're soft, not completely done. And a spinach. You're going to fry the spinach with your scallions.
Fried
which is different.
spinach.
Doesn't sound real appetizing right here. But
Oh,
it
it's an odd combination.
looks like it would go into stuffed shells or something. You got salt and pepper, just a little bit.
So there's Greek recipes of spinach,
Right.
some type of spinach
And
pie.
Parmesan cheese, which it would also be a Greek. Now, you're going to use a whole cup here, and it really disappears quite fast. Gets creamy. Your Parmesan cheese will get creamy in here.
When you were putting this together, we were taping this, you were eating right out of this dish right here, Kat.
And it was good, believe me.
Well, that's just a good spinach recipe on its own.
That's right.
This salmon, you cut thinner than the normal fillet.
These
so
were very thick fillets.
well, there's big salmon we catch.
That's right.
I
Michigan
must have
Outdoors.
caught those.
Yeah, Bob.
Go line your dish here. Now, you got a greased casserole dish. You're going to actually just kind of line your dish with the fillets. And salt and pepper a little bit more. Now, you wouldn't really need to salt and pepper here if you didn't want to, and especially with the salt.
But Diane said salt and pepper.
That's right.
She got the runner-up status with this.
And some paprika.
Paprika, that's a kind of pepper, isn't it?
It is. Pepper, it's just exactly what it is. And lemon juice. Now, you always find lemon juice with a fish dish because it enhances it, so it just kind of brings out that flavor in fish.
It also takes some of the stronger flavor, if it has
does.
any stronger
That's right.
flavor.
Now, you're going to pour your spinach mixture right in the middle of this. And just kind of make a, because your
Pat
fish
it
makes
down?
a little nest, yep. Just, now, you want to cook this in water. Put your whole dish in water because you don't want the bottom to brown because you do want to get it out of there easily.
Oh, that's right, because we flipped it upside down here. Huh. And then this is the white sauce.
White sauce, butter and flour. Now, you want to make a thick white sauce because you don't want it to run all off your mold. And milk. And with white sauce, you have to cook it slowly. It'll keep it from lumping up. And just until it thickens up.
And you're supposed to put a little teeny bit of the broth from the casserole.
Yes, and some scallions.
Flip this thing upside down, and it holds together even
It
when
sure
it's hot?
did. Yep.
And there's the white sauce, and I guess it's time to cut into it. Does this break your heart, Bob, to cut into this and put it on your plate?
It looks much better with several pieces missing out of it.
Okay, well, here's a good-sized chunk for you, Bob, and there's you can see
We'll
the
see the
spinach in
spinach,
there. Interesting. Now, the comments, as Bob is tasting it once again to refresh his memory, I'll say that in our Fish and Wild Game cookbook, Bob said that this was you've never had a combination like this before. Can't say that now because you've eaten one before, but this, no strong taste of salmon. Chef Randy Bell said that he wasn't a fish lover, but he said the presentation of this is beautiful and the combination is great. And it certainly is a beautiful dish. There's the spinach inside with the cheese. How is it, Bob?
Oh, it's great. But, you know, I liked it a lot. But Morton F., he gave it a perfect 10. I'll tell
He
you,
did,
he
a
was
perfect 10.
absolutely...
He says, Mort says this is a championship dish.
Who's going to quarrel with Mort? You know?
That's right. Well, Diane Lardy sent that recipe in. It's a great one, a way to fix these fall salmon, get them out of the freezer. This was tops,
Oh,
Kat.
yeah, it was.
A winner in our Fish and Wild Game cooking contest. Hope you can get outdoors this weekend. Maybe get a big buck, maybe get a salmon, who knows. But the outdoors is a great place to be. See you next week. Dr. Rob Wagner from Deer and Deer Hunting magazine has an article in the upcoming issue of the Outdoor Digest on the subject of deer beds and what deer do with their time. According to an English study, deer spend about 7 hours a day gathering food, much of this near their bedding areas. They spend 7 hours chewing their cud, often from a bedding area. Another 5 hours are spent bedded down, just watching without chewing their cud. Bedding is the most common activity. Most of their time is spent in areas where they like to hide and lay down. This is where you should concentrate your hunting. It's more productive than hunting the feeding areas. But even if you find the bedding areas, will you see the deer? Will they move? Will you be patient enough to wait? Few more reasons why putting venison on the table is an ultimate challenge in Michigan outdoors.